Hello, friends. Welcome back. Hello, Laura.
Hello.
So glad to see you. Welcome, everybody, to back to our podcast. It is called Oh for Dying Out Loud, and I'm your host, one of your hosts, Angie Cat, who is a magical life midwife. And joining me is,
I'm a dazzling death doula, Laura Shaw.
yes, thank you. We had a discussion last time about this fabulous book that I read that's getting
Mhm.
all kinds of rave reviews. Lots of people are talking about it. The Measure. Yes.
Backwards. I know. I'm sorry, everyone.
No, it's okay. Nikki Erlich.
Mhm.
And I finished the book
Yes.
like I think in 3 days.
Yes.
I not put it down. And dear Laura, she got it and said, let's talk about it once I've
Mhm.
read it.
Mhm.
So, want to preface this discussion by saying we're going to be talking about a little bit about this book and Laura's experience of it thus far. I'm going to try
Yes.
really hard not to spoil it for
It's okay.
her.
You can spoil anything you want. I'm just a little over halfway through. I got it, and then I started it this weekend, and super, super fast read. So,
Yeah, it is a fast read. I mean, it's such a really easy read, and
yeah.
it's not, it's so interesting, and you just
Mhm.
keep wanting, like, I would be in bed and I'd be like, well, I can't leave it there. I've got to keep going. I
Keep
need to
going. Just
find
one
out,
more. Just one more. Yeah.
right?
Super good.
But we thought about this would be our kicking off point to kind of, I guess, season two, if you might consider, sort of the next phase of this podcast, where we're moving
Mhm.
kind of away from talking about death. We've done a lot about grieving and death doula and death paperwork and those kinds of things, which is all very important. We may
Very.
circle back depending on people's needs, but we're going to talk a little bit more about, well, what do we do? What is this information now? How does that help us to live our lives sacredly? So you're going to be
Yeah.
hearing more about spiritual practices and techniques and processes for getting to know yourself and living your life more fully. So
Mhm.
we're excited about this next
Yes.
phase. Yeah.
How to live so that when it's time to die, you get to die with just feeling
Yeah.
great.
Peace. By the way, I don't know if I told you this. Did we talk about this in the last podcast? Maybe we should do one about menopausal and brain fatigue because I can't remember anything.
Mhm.
So before we dive into the book, there was a guy that I had met, I think once or twice. He was a fabulous, is a fabulous musician. Lived in Maryland, and I met him through several different songwriting camps that I'd gone to. His name was Tom Prasada Rao, and he was just like the Buddha. I mean, he's just fabulous songwriter, fabulous artist, made everybody feel like they were geniuses and was just so kind and wonderful. I mean, that's what I took away from my very brief meetings with him. I mean, he was so encouraging to me.
Mhm.
But at any rate, I am connected to him on Facebook and have been watching over the several years now his battle with cancer. And I'll spare the gory details, but it's been a long process and lots of radiation surgeries. We'd get better, and then it would show up somewhere else. So then watching this last phase, as the oncologist is like, there is nothing more that we can do.
Right.
And the sheer number of people that came out to see him, spend time with him, and how he received them and everything. And what I loved, and I recognize, first of all, that not everybody gets to go like this, but apparently his sister was with him at his last breath. She had been doing the bedside vigil for several days, and he was resting quietly, and his eyes were closed, and he opened his eyes, and he just said to her, "Are you ready?" And she said,
Mhm.
"I'm ready. Are you ready?" And he said, "I'm ready." Closed his eyes and took his last breath. It was like, there's the door. It's time for me to go. And it was just, and everybody was like, damn you, Tom. That's of course how you would go.
Yeah.
It was just so graceful. And I just, Godspeed to you, Tom. You touched more people's lives than you knew. And it's in that again that I reflect back on, seeing all of the videos and how he lived and how he touched people's lives, that I think it's so amazing about this book.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
even though, to recap, people get in this fictional tale, people get a box on their doorstep. At everybody around the world, every single person 22 years and older gets a box on their doorstep. It has a string in it. They're differing lengths. The scientists quickly discover that it corresponds to the length of time that you have left on this planet. And so it's just an interesting story told through the lens of about 8 different characters of how they grapple with the news. Do they look at the box? Do they not look at the box? How do they, tell their family and friends, and how do they navigate that? And it's just such an interesting story and an interesting thing. So I've read it. I know you're not finished with it, but I'd love to hear what you think so far.
Yes, of course. So I'd like to say there is a piece of this in the middle that gets a little muddy because it's all about politics and government. Not the story isn't, but it
Right,
does
right.
kind of, people kind of go sideways a little bit. So I'm like, no, no, we don't do that. But of course that would happen. So there is
Of
that.
course, it's got to make it interesting,
Right? Yes, yes. So you asked me on our last podcast what I would do instantly. I said to you, I would not open the box. I don't want to know.
Right.
Um, and
And I said I would.
yeah,
That I probably would, because I'm like, well, if I knew how long I was going to live,
mhm,
I'm going to plan things differently.
yeah. So I'm sticking with I am not opening the box.
Okay, very good.
So I'm just 100% there, just not opening the box. And partially because so my life before and now very different. So my before life, from probably 15 years ago, definitely living a different life, definitely really planning for future. Right now, I just have to do all these things. And just a series of things have happened. Um, and not the least of which was taking death doula courses after taking an amazing time well spent, hiring my friend Angie to be my life coach and talking about, I'm just saying, well
Yeah.
spent, yeah. And really discovering that this is this beautiful gift that I love to be in this space. So, one of the things that has really shifted for me is I really do try to carefully balance, because it's a balancing act, um, planning for the future to make sure that I'm going to be okay, while
Right,
not forgetting that the only thing that I have is right, the only real thing I have is now, just
right,
right here. So
right now.
I try to just remind myself of that as often as possible. Hence the trip to Paris and London, the annual trip with grandchildren to varying places. I'm definitely, I try really hard. So what I've learned from the book though is so interesting because it's this great perspective about the different things and reactions that people have.
Right,
So first of all, it's intriguing to me to watch the different, this author she's done a really good job of what I would assume or what seems like it would be the response. So there's a doctor who finds out, his length maybe isn't very long at all, or
right,
lots of partners who find out they have different lengths and what that does to the relationship. So I started really, and then people having to tell their parents or choosing to tell their parents or not tell their parents how long their strings are, so as to head off the grief.
right,
So the thing that I keep coming back to, that is so fascinating, is that, some of the characters have chosen not to tell their families. They don't want anyone to know. They're just going to continue living and enjoying, whatever, and not tell anyone because they don't want the grief. And I'm like, well, the grief is coming. Like that grief is
right,
coming, friend. So you
right,
can't stay put
right.
off. But one of the unexpected pieces that I didn't really think about was some of what they refer to in the book as short stringers, um,
Yes.
like doing crazy things. And when I
Mhm.
say crazy, I mean, you know, going off the rails, like,
Mhm. Trying to
robbing
commit
things and
suicide.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just
Sorry
really
about the
being
trigger.
kind of pushed over the edge. So I hadn't really considered that. And then I'm like, of course that could happen. Because it's such a mass
Yes.
scale, like everyone in the
Right.
world, and they're not being heard. And so
Yeah.
then I think about people who get this, like people get this news every day. They don't
Right.
get string in a box, but they get the news
Right.
that
Right. They do get a diagnosis,
right,
or,
right, or
they're in a car accident or
uh,
something, and they,
right,
yeah.
because the thing that I keep coming back to
Or
is people with the long strings. Um, a long string just means you're going to live. It doesn't mean the quality or who the love that you can fill that time with. So
yeah.
for me, I'm still out. I'm still like, no, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just enjoy as much as I'm gonna squeeze all the crazy joy out of this life. And I'm gonna try to, you know, take the risks and adventures that I can. Uh,
Yeah.
I remember we were so blessed one year when Gracie was kind of young. Some friends of ours, I didn't actually know them that well at the time. But I love them dearly. Um, they took us to Disney in California. She was
Mm.
relatively newly diagnosed with
Mm.
diabetes, and they're like, you know what, you deserve a vacation. Let's go. And we went. We went to California, and I get very motion sick, like super motion sick. But
Oh, so
my
do I. I hate it.
right,
Oh, hate it. So
but
embarrassing.
like I'll throw up on planes, friends. So don't sit
Oh,
next to me. I
okay.
have a
Not flying
patch
with you.
and pills.
Yeah,
It's
it's okay.
fine. But I made a commitment that I was going, and this was probably the only time in my life I would go, and I was going to go on every single ride. If Gracie wanted to do it, we were doing it. If my friends, yep, we were doing it, and we did. And man, I popped those motion sickness pills like Tic Tacs, but I did every single thing, and I
Did
just
you really? And you survived them?
yes,
Wow,
Tower of
good on
Terror,
you.
like we did them. We just did all the scary things. That I'm just like, wow, really? Why are we doing this? But all right, please drop me from a, 12-story building or whatever that crazy ride.
Right?
Yep, that was it. Like we're there one time. I'm here once. I just
Right.
have to do this. So I tried really hard uh
Right.
to kind of live in that way. But I'm fat. This book is so fascinating because of all the things I hadn't considered, like how that might push
Yeah.
someone over the edge, but that news might push someone over the edge.
Right. Or
Yeah.
the just the decisions they make about their relationships or their jobs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Some people didn't change anything,
Right.
some people, but it did. It was, I think that was one of the things that I loved most about the book was the fact that it was complex.
Yes.
Like we think we know what the answer would be
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to the question, and we don't,
We
because
don't.
there's so many nuances to it.
Yeah. Right. Well, and then you get pressure. So let's say I don't open it, but my children are begging me to open it because they want to know. Then do I give in to them?
Right.
Do you do that? It's kind of like when someone gets a diagnosis
Right.
of cancer or a terminal illness, sometimes they don't tell their family. And sometimes people react with a that's so selfish. That's so selfish that they don't tell their family.
Yeah.
And I think is it and I will admit to you that I am sure in my lifetime I have said that seems really selfish. Like I want to know all my parents' business. Like
Right.
what you have a doctor's appointment, what for? Like what's good?
Right.
I feel entitled to know. Um,
Right.
right? But
But they, on some level, first of all, we forget that they have to process it first,
right,
right?
right.
I think that's part of it, is that it's like, I don't want to have to manage you and your emotions when I
Mm-hmm.
haven't fully figured out how I'm processing all of this
Right,
first.
right.
So I don't, if you want to call that selfish, so be it. I got to figure
Mm-hmm.
this out first.
Yes.
But the other piece too is that I think everybody, if they were faced with that decision, if you or I or anybody else actually got the diagnosis, we know darn well that is going to change everything. It's
Everything.
going to change every dynamic in every relationship that you have. And yes, that in and of itself causes pause.
Yep.
Maybe that person doesn't tell you right away,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going to think really long and hard about what they're going to tell you and when. And I get that.
Right. And what agony that is for, it's such a burden that I was struck by that in this book.
Right.
Um, what an agony it was for some folks to tell their parents or
Right.
to um,
Mhm.
tell a loved one, sibling, whatever.
Right.
And what a burden that is for them to carry. There's a doctor in this book, and he didn't tell anyone, just didn't tell
Yeah.
anyone, until he accidentally left his string on the counter, and a friend was there and saw it.
Yeah.
Um, and it was such a brutal release, but lovely that he got to have that release. Like his
Yeah.
friend was so supportive and
Yeah.
lovely, and I'm like, oh gosh, what a release. But then I go to all the, the different people I know in my life, and I think, okay, this person would never tell anyone because they would feel like a burden.
Right.
Or this
Right.
person would tell everybody right away because that's just who they are. And so
Right.
I was trying to think about what kind of pressure that would put on us,
Yeah.
and does put on people all the time when you get any sort of news like that.
Right. I mean, it is. And yet, this whole thing makes me think about the fact, like we talked a little bit last time. It's like I love the book and the conversations that
Mm,
this is
yeah,
sparking because
yeah.
we're sitting there now going, what if? And trying to understand, well, why wouldn't they say anything? And when would you give the news? The reality is
Mhm.
we are all going to transition. We are all going to die in some way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Fact that this book to me highlights the fact that we cannot live fully until we continue to talk about death and its coming,
Right.
right?
Right.
You don't need to have a string on your doorstep.
Mhm.
You don't need to have a diagnosis. You don't need any of those things to
Mhm.
start thinking about now.
Right.
How would I have those conversations? Can I have those conversations now about my health and what I think might happen and what plans do I have and what do I want to do now to live my life to the fullest, right?
Right.
To
Mhm.
your point, we shouldn't need a string, but I think the reason we're not having those conversations is because, well, if I don't have a reason to talk about it, I don't have a diagnosis, I don't have strength, then yeah,
Mhm.
let's,
Mhm.
but I think if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it because the other thing about it that I love is the fact that throughout the whole book, death is imminent,
Oh, yeah.
just like we do
Mhm.
in this life.
Yes.
And it points to the fact that if you know that,
Mhm.
if you know that truly, and you know that there will be heartbreak and you know there will be grief, you will continue on and live anyway. That is part of the beauty, the heartbreaking beauty of life
Mhm.
is knowing that life in this form, Angie in this form, is not going to last forever.
Right.
So soak it up, friends, as long as
I'm
you can.
soaking it up, people.
You know what I mean? Like, I
Mhm.
think we just, that's what I could not, I mean, right up until the very end. I won't spoil it for you, but
Good.
the last few chapters just are so poignant, heartbreaking,
Yes.
and beautiful.
People. Mhm.
So beautiful. And it's like that could be life now for us. Like when I get this way too, people think that I'm overly sensitive. I am. I don't care. You know, I feel things on a deeper level than a lot of other people do. I notice things on a deeper level than many people might, you know. And for example, 4th of July, was invited by some friends over to their house. It was a impromptu, hey, come on over. We're going to have food. We'll go on a hike before the parade, and then we'll come back and we'll have food and we'll have music. We'll make some music. We went on this beautiful hike. It was hot as all get out, a little bit much for me, but I made it. We hiked for an hour and a half at 2 in the afternoon through the most beautiful wildflower fields
Wow.
and down in the creeks and saw mushrooms and scrambled over rocks and stuff. There was like, I think there was 8 of us or something, just chit chattering the whole way. We come back, we eat like mad people because we had burned it off. We talk some more, we make music, we just have, and the whole drive home, driving home, watching the sunset in Iowa, it's one of those poignant moments where I'm like, I can't even describe to you the immense gratitude and love that I feel for these people, that I feel for being able to have this kind of joy filled
Mhm.
activity all afternoon. And it's just I can't put it into words, but it's stuff like that that it's just like, oh God, this life is so amazing. And I'm so grateful, you know, and they may be small things, you know, it doesn't have to be big, fancy, you know. I mean, I'm sure Disneyland was amazing, but my point is that it's in those little things, those little
Mhm.
connections, those little impromptu things that I just feel such big emotions around because it is that beauty of life. And so I don't know where I was going with that. Just to say that I think that this book highlights that it's those moments we need to pay attention to. And really, that's intimacy, is feeling all of the wonderful feelings
Right.
about what's right here and right now,
Mhm.
you
You know,
know?
um one of the things that uh I really appreciate about that is the idea that it's all the little things. You and I have had lots of conversations um about this, and one of the things that we've talked about recently is, you know, kind of appreciating where we're at, and maybe it's not the, you know, maybe life isn't going exactly the way that we had planned, or maybe you know, things aren't coming as quickly as we want them to, or whatever. um
Okay.
and it doesn't change that we, you know, find this joy in these other pieces of our lives
Mhm.
that we can just absolutely slurp up and just fulfill ourselves
Yeah.
in a way that, you know, I remember being young and really believing that you had to find this epic job and being, you know, do the thing that
God, they
your
sold
whole
us a bill of
world.
goods, didn't they?
They sure did. This, you know, beautiful love story and a white horse and
Oh, everything Holland.
right, yes. And I love the messy. I love the chaos and I think that it's one of the beautiful parts of this book is being reminded that
Yeah.
it's dirty, it's messy, and that's okay. And it's still beautiful and it's still,
Yeah.
you know,
It's both and,
yes,
right?
yes, both
That's what
and.
I love about it. Colette says that all the time, and I just love that. She's like, we're not trying to do either or, good or bad. That still creates duality.
Right.
This whole life is both and.
Both
It's
and.
going to be messy and joy filled. It's going to
Mhm.
be grief and happiness. It's going to be alone or loneliness and connection. I mean, they're all existing, but we've been fed a bill of goods that says this is what you should be achieving for everything on this side of the line.
Mhm.
The perfect job, the perfect family, the perfect finances, the perfect house, whatever.
Right.
And it just isn't. There is perfection in the imperfection.
Mm.
And the more that we can do that, the people that are happiest are the ones that understand that whole concept of both and that, yeah, there's times where it's nutso, and it's challenging and it's, you know, I for no reason other than it was a Cancer new moon this past weekend, I sat after meditation, I was journaling, and I just felt this sort of dis-ease and I just let myself cry.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, I have no idea why I'm crying, but I just feel like crying. And instead of judging myself, I just let it happen. And, pretty soon it was over. And I could be okay with it and go, oh, okay, well, maybe there was a little pocket of grief that leaked out or something. Or, I don't know. Maybe I don't know what I was sad about. And maybe I don't have to have a reason, but I felt good after having a good cry. Like we talk about that, right? Like, oh, I
Yep.
just need to have a good cry. I just need to have a cathartic good cry.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have both. You can cry, you can feel sad, you can feel lonely, and still understand and feel the beauty of it all too,
Right.
And um, I think that, this is some of the stuff that we're hoping to explore in
Mm-hmm.
later podcast episodes is, some of the spiritual tools
Mm-hmm.
that you can put in your toolbox that might help you to get closer to a both and. Because in my belief, and this is part of the reason why my business is called Soulful Living with Angie, is because I love creating a sacred life. But a sacred life, the way I define it, is finding the sacred in everything,
Right.
right? That yes, there's ritual, there's things that really make me feel filled up spiritually. There's things that fill up my health and well-being, but being able to recognize the sacredness in a good cry, the sacredness in that opportunity that I was going for and really hoping for, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
get, and that door closed. Can I find the sacredness in that? Right. And so that's what I'm hoping that we can discuss a little further, because those are the things that have really helped me, so that when something challenging happens, when something disappointing happens, it doesn't knock me on my butt. It's really just, let me sit with this for a minute. What does it have to tell me? What
Right.
does it have to show me? What is there something I need to learn? Is there something that I need to do for myself or others? Is there something that maybe I overlooked that is wonderful about it? There's that story, I think it's a Buddhist story, where uh so this farmer and his son were living on this farm, and oh, how does it start? They get sold this old oxen, and the farmer said, the people who sold him the ox said, "Oh, he's so old, he's not going to be able to do anything." And the farmer's response always was, "Is that so?" And then, they were like, okay, whatever, you bought this, this, steer or whatever. And the steer didn't do as much work, but when the winter was cold and they didn't have any food, provided them food for the winter, so maybe that steer actually did provide them some good, right? Later on, the son had fallen off of a horse or something like that and broke his leg. And, his neighbors are like, oh, that's so awful. He broke his leg. It's awful. And the farmer would say, is that so? And then a few days later, the troops are coming through town and they're gathering up all the able-bodied men to go off to war, but they wouldn't take the son because he had just broken his
It's
leg.
like,
So
mhm.
it just goes through several different scenarios like that. So and one of my friends who is also practicing Buddhist, her response to anything is, isn't that interesting? it annoys me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Like there's times where it's like I'm on fire about something, they cut you off in traffic. Isn't that interesting? It's like, it's not interesting. But it is if you just go, oh, like how it changes your perspective. It
Mhm.
changes and widens the view. Like I do try to do this when somebody's cutting me off in traffic or whatever, or they're going too slow, and I
Yes.
start to feel my blood boil. I try to say, well, what's the other stories that could be possible here? Maybe this is someone who is driving in a new area of town and they're not familiar and they're scared about it and somebody's already been honking their horns at them or they just lost power to their phone and they don't have their GPS. Maybe it's somebody who's trying to get to the hospital, or maybe just somebody who just like us is so stressed out about getting a diagnosis or something that they completely forget that there's another car next to them and they ended up moving out into the lane, and not intending it to. We
Right.
we think we take everything so personally, and it really has nothing to do with us,
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, I think it's just, again, the book and this whole conversation just kind of brings up some of those really great topics that I can't wait to dive into to just see both, and what is good and what is meaningful
Right.
about what is happening here, even if we got a string that's a short
Right.
string.
Right. Well, and to that point, I think that one of the beautiful pieces that this story reminds us is what is important. Is it is it really that important that I get to work 2 minutes ahead of time and I cut everyone off? Maybe it is. Maybe I'm going to get fired if I'm late one more time. Um, or maybe something awful has just happened, or
Yeah.
but also for me, maybe it's not. And maybe I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
you go. You drive as
Yep.
fast as you need to, and I'll just get out of your way because you clearly have something else happening.
Right.
Um, and I really I try to remind myself of that. Like, what is really
Mhm.
important? Is it important to
Right.
um is it important to have a angry conversation with someone in a car who can't hear you and can't
Right.
respond to you because it makes you feel better? Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
Um, or
Doubtful.
and right. And yeah, so I love this idea that it tries to recenter everything. Like,
Right.
okay, what if my string is short? What if my
Right.
string is long?
Mhm.
What would I want to happen or
Mhm.
to know? It's kind of that idea of um people always tell they always tell people say the things you need to say so that
Right.
when you go
Right.
people know. And
Right.
it's like, yeah, I shouldn't need a string, but we might need a string. So it's interesting that this book is really about
Yeah.
the idea that you have the string, here you
Right.
go. So it's kind of a gift, even
Right.
when people see it as kind of a curse,
Right.
or
Right.
some awful thing. Um,
Yeah.
because would it change if
Right.
I had, because that's the other piece of this. If I received a box and my string was very, very short,
Hmm.
would I do something different?
Right.
Would I
Right.
quit my job and go, which can be, yes, that can be the answer. I used to work in a building many, many moons ago,
Hmm.
with a man whose entire job, this is probably a very high level overview of it, but he had a business
Sure.
and
Sure.
he would pay people out a portion of their life insurance so they could sell him their life insurance. So if I am insured for $200,000, he might give me $100,000 to go make my dreams come true because I'm dying. And then when I go, he gets the entire life insurance. And I remember my first reaction was like, well, why the hell would you do that? That money
Mm.
goes to your
Yeah.
family or whatever. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, well, because if I'm dying, maybe I would really, really want to go spend all of my last year on a beach with my kids or
Right.
whatever. And so
Right.
it's this idea that if you could do, I don't know what this business is called, don't ask me. I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
But this is a
Yes.
legitimate business. It's an industry where he buys and sells people's life insurance policies from them. Um, or brokers them maybe for other people.
Yeah, I
But
don't.
really, the idea is that he helps them make decisions about what they want the
Mhm.
remaining portion of their life to be.
Right.
And
Right.
what a gift. And it is that what I would do?
Yeah.
You know, and so it
Yeah.
what would you do, Ange? What would you do if you had a short string?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I think the interesting thing here that is the thread that weaves it all together. See
Yeah.
what I did there? Is
Mhm.
that we do all have a string. We
We
just
do.
don't know how long it is.
Mhm.
That's all there is to it.
Yep.
But it is interesting because I've been thinking about this a lot since I've read the book because it's like, well, what would I do differently? You know, like if it would take a short string, first of all, the answer to the question is hell yes. I would not continue to work if my string was very short.
Right.
I would quit my job, and I would, make my plans, and then I would spend it with the people I love.
Mhm.
Depending on how long it might be, I might travel a little bit more, but it would be more about um, just having connection and meaningful, like a walk in the woods, like I don't need to go on a rocket ship to Mars. I don't need anything big and huge.
Mhm.
I just, because here's the other thing that's on the other side of that coin. You know me as well as I do, in that I have a problem sitting down and sitting still for long periods of time.
Me too.
So there's that part of me that would be like, oh, I've got a short string. I am going to do everything. And I don't know that that would increase my quality of life in that short amount of time either. I think it would make me way more stressed because I'm trying to cram it all in.
Right.
So I think, maybe that's the wisdom of years now
Mhm.
that there is something beautiful being able to just sit out. Did you see my video on Facebook the other day? Sitting out on my deck and a hot air
Yeah.
balloon is floating by,
Right by.
just watching,
Hmm.
waving at me, and so it's things like that, where I think I want it to be, yes, I would love to go on some adventures. There may be some traveling I would love to do, but ultimately, I'd want it to be balanced with things that would just bring me a sense of peace
Mhm.
and ease. Um, I'm not a thrill seeker. I watched This came up on my feed. I watched some girl who was base jumping off of a cliff, and
No.
she was holding up the camera looking down at her, and it was watching her as she's inching towards the edge, and I thought I was going to vomit for her. I was
Yes.
just
Yes.
like,
On her behalf, I'm
no.
going to vomit. Hmm.
No, absolutely not.
Hmm.
So I'm not that kind of a thrill seeker where I need to do all the things. Um, because for me it is about meaning. And so I think it would definitely be about spending time with the people I care deeply about, and having, some of those meaningful experiences. I would want to travel to Europe, but I'm also planning to travel to Europe next year. That's my goal. I'm
You
hoping
got this.
that I
You
can get
got
that
this.
going. So, yeah. And as I'm talking about this, let me just also say I recognize that I live a very privileged life.
Right.
I am not rich by rich standards, but I am rich by my rich standards. And I
Mhm.
understand that. I know there's lots of people out there that would be like, I don't know what I'd do because I don't know if I could quit my job. I don't, you know what I mean? I realize that this is all conjecture and fantasy and that kind of thing. And yet, it just is fueling the conversation to look at, what are you doing with this one precious life, as the poem says. Because if we're, and you don't need a string to do that. It's about, I think, continually checking in. Yeah, New Year's Eve can do that for you. I'm not a big fan of resolutions or any of that stuff. I am a big fan of the check-in, the regular check-in with yourself. I am a big fan of journaling. I'm a big fan of therapy or counseling, a fan of taking stock of your life on a regular basis to say to yourself, where am I? Am I doing the things that are a priority for me? Do they meet my values? If not, what needs to change? And what's the first baby step that I need to do?
Right.
Right? I mean, when you met me when we were doing coaching,
Mm-hmm.
that was the question, right? It was like, I just really, this work is not fulfilling me. Okay, so what's the thing you really would like to do? You said, I want to be a death doula. Great. What's the first step? We don't have to know what the whole plan is. We just need
Right.
to know what maybe the first step is. Oh, I guess I should probably research what certifications are out there.
Right.
And that gets the ball rolling and that can take us on a trajectory. So yeah, I think particularly in the second half of my life, now that I'm hit menopause, I am doing that more often, going, where am I at? Am I feeling pretty good about my trajectory? Yeah, I've made a heck of a lot of, and I think part of that is looking back and just over a rue and going, wow, look at how far I've come.
Right.
Because you may not be where you want to be right now, but I guarantee you there is someone else out there who's looking at you going, oh my God, I wish I were where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So can you take a look back just briefly in the rearview mirror and go, wow, look at where I was before and look at where I am now. That is proof of my evolution. That is proof of my forward movement. Great. Now what's the next little
Right.
thing?
Now, what's next?
Right. Right.
Always looking forward in that way.
Always looking forward, and not to the point where, because I'm not about crushing goals and
No.
constantly
Oh,
cracking the
no.
whip to drive you forward, but just in a meaningful way to look at, am I do I feel contented 70-80% of the time in my life?
You know, this brings to mind for me when you said not in a, kind of crazy way, I would call it. Sorry
Yeah.
if I was judging.
Yeah.
But there's such a hustle
Mhm.
culture right now where
Yes.
everyone is constantly hustle, hustle, hustle to make more money, to get more
Right.
likes, social media, get more likes or
Yeah.
whatever the clicks are.
Or build their business,
Right.
and
Yes. Yes.
get
There's
more
such a,
clients,
yeah. And
which is part, I'm sure.
yeah, it seems like I am at a point like you where it's like, oh, okay. That's not really, I'm not, I mean, I definitely had two jobs most of my life, sometimes three, often while I was still going to school, which took
Mhm.
me, decades longer than it needed to. But it took me exactly how long it needed to take me.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
um, yeah, like I don't, it's like, no, I don't have that desire or drive. I just want to enjoy the things and the
Yeah,
people and the experiences. Um,
right.
but you're right, it comes from a little bit of a place of privilege
Mhm.
that I have gotten to, where I can look back and say, wow, I came from this space and
Mhm.
I can see all the steps and we have such a short-sightedness, I want to say, where I tend to be the person who's like, wow, yeah, I went to therapy for years. Yep. Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, but it's okay. You're gonna be fine. And then I think back and I'm like, I mean, okay, it was brutal for, I went for 15 years or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Um, so certainly I hope that one of the things that this book does for anyone who reads it, but even if you're not in a place to read it at this point, one of the things that I hope that people find in this space is
Mhm.
that it, like you said, it's baby steps. It doesn't have to be some big,
Right.
Because every little, like every time you show up to therapy, or maybe even just finding a therapist, or maybe just journaling in the
Mhm.
beginning, wherever it is you're starting from, it
Yeah.
can build such a change
Mm.
for your life and for
Right.
where you're at right now and
Right.
where you're headed to.
Right.
Because that is definitely the book is this book is fascinating in that it opens up so many conversations and so many um really rewarding ideas about, there's religion a little bit
Mhm.
about what people, what their traditions are, or what their belief systems are. And then there's, the practical, do you stay with a partner who has a short string when you have a long string? Do you,
Right.
whatever. And I do appreciate that no kids were harmed in the making of this book. There were no strings for
No
children.
one was harmed in the making of this book, thankfully.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So no children ever got the string. So
Yes. That's what I
lovely.
liked
Hmm,
about it. Yeah.
hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I just appreciate all the genuine space
Hmm.
of um thoughtfulness and
Yeah.
the what ifs and the questions. Because
Hmm.
I think that questions are so important to growing and healing
Yes.
and deciding and determining and really enjoying your life. But I think that's
Right.
what the thing that fascinated me about this book the most was is
Hmm.
how
Yeah.
many questions came from it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I mean, it's certainty is not guaranteed to us.
Right,
In fact, it's the one thing we can rely on is that we won't be certain about a lot of things. You
right.
know what I mean?
Yes,
I think it's part of the discovery,
yeah.
in the living. And, we've mentioned therapy several times. We've talked about
Mhm.
journaling, which I'm a big fan of, because again, it's that both and being able to process both of those, like I've been to therapy several times off and on throughout my years on this planet, and wildly beneficial
Mhm.
to have someone else to help me process what is happening so I don't stuff it down, and have it come out sideways at another
Mhm.
time. And it's not that we're broken. It's
Right.
really not about being broken. It is simply about um, being able to see all of life for what it is. And
Hmm.
and I think I've mentioned this before. My personal beliefs from the things that I've read and the things that really resonate for me is that we are a soul in a human body having a human experience. We are an eternal soul. My belief is that we incarnated here on this planet with the sole purpose of experiencing anything and everything that we want to. Right. And so someone may say, and this is going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, and I'm not going to take us there, but you have to do your homework. And this is the thing that I've been interested in is, okay, well, so you're saying that I came onto this planet to experience an abusive relationship or, financial, poverty or whatever. It's like from a spiritual perspective, yeah, I do believe that there's part of that human experience. And if we can if we, I mean, think about it this way. The reason I love that philosophy is because then it puts the power back on me.
Hmm.
That gives me back the power to go, oh, I don't have to take this personally. I'm not a victim necessarily. I still have options. I may not have all the resources available to me, but I do have some.
Right.
I have other people. I have XYZ. I have something. Each one of us, I believe, has resources. And so, and we have options. We just didn't give ourselves the space to think about what this means for us,
Right.
because and I can say this from my personal experience because there were times in my life where I was missing rent payments and I was missing credit card payments. I was living off of credit cards because I didn't have a lot of money. I was, I was working two or three jobs. There were times where it was really, in my mind, sketchy. There were times where I didn't have health insurance. There were times I've been in abusive relationships.
Right.
And yes, there is a point in any one of those situations where I know for a fact that I saw myself, oh my God, this is awful. I'm a victim. There's no way I'm going to get out of this. And that may be true for what you're feeling. And I want to validate that. That's a very
Yeah.
real part of the human experience. And what I can tell you is that if I can do it, you have options. You have options and opportunities. There are, for every story of someone being down and out, there are three times as many stories of people being down and out and finding baby steps out of that and evolving. You have that power as an eternal soul. And I'm not going to try and spiritually bypass this by saying, oh, you just have to think positive thoughts and do affirmations. That's BS. That is not true. You first have to feel what you're feeling, validate what you're feeling, take a good hard look at what's going on in your life, and take ownership of what you can. Because you can't change everything, right? You can't change
Right.
other people. You may not be able to change your job, but there are things that you can do. So, starting there with the smallest things of taking stock in your life, and if you want to find out what it would be like, ask yourself the question, if I'm in this situation right now and I got a string that said that I wasn't going to live very much longer, what would I do differently?
Right.
That probably is one of the most powerful things in the book, is because that sparks you to start thinking about,
Yeah.
what would I do?
What would
And
I do?
can I do that now?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have a friend who right now who's really struggling with a lot of burnout in their job. I know a lot of people that are struggling with burnout. I did last year and the year before. Many of us did during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into a headspace where I just really felt like this sucks. I am never going to be able to get out of this. I don't see a way out. There's no escaping this. I'm trapped. And it's very easy to feel that way. That's human, because we forget how powerful we are as souls, and the fact that we do have, there is at least one thing you can do. You can share it with somebody else and ask if they have any ideas about what they might suggest, or, do they know somebody? Do they know of some resources, that are available that can help? There is I'm a resource for anybody who might need it, right? Come talk to me. So it really, I do feel that's the power of journaling. That's the power of counseling, is that when you're in those dark, deep spaces, you can't see every possibility that's available to you.
Right. Right.
And
Go ahead.
that's valid.
Yeah, it is.
Does make a fact.
So I'm just going to ask you a question as you were
Mhm.
talking. Um, so in the world of journaling, do you believe that, so for anyone who doesn't understand what manifesting is, there's this entire sort of belief system around the idea that if you write something down and you think about it and you kind of co-create your own future. It's a tradition in many beliefs. It's like prayer, in
Mhm.
a more Christian belief.
Yeah.
It's out there in many, many beliefs. So I apologize for not knowing all the words. So do you think that
Yeah.
journaling can act as and do you journal the outlet of all your thoughts? Do you also then journal the things you want, or do you just go for the dreams and aspirations? Like, what kind of journaling do you think is most helpful for you?
Mhm.
Um,
That's a
in
really great question.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
book, there were some people who did some writing. It wasn't exactly journaling, but it really made
Yeah.
some connections. And so, I just
Yeah.
want your thoughts on that as you were talking about this. I love this thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're coming up on our
I
hour.
know
So
I'm
I'm
gonna
not going to
be
go into deep diving because I think we'll table the bulk of this for next time because journaling has evolved for me over the
okay.
years. I have done journaling where it has been sporadic, and it's usually this is where I dump my hairball.
Okay.
I'm
Yep.
frustrated about something. What is interesting to me about it is that when I have done that, it is cathartic.
Hmm.
Deepak Chopra talks about it as called recapitulation. And I love that. It's just a fancy word for digestion, really.
Hmm.
We have to take time to digest our food. Journaling is a process for digesting our emotions because in Ayurveda, the belief is if you don't digest your emotional experiences, they build up in your body
Right.
and they can cause physical ailments.
Right.
So he talks about that being a very strong process is journaling. Um, Oftentimes when I would do that, if I would sit with it and I'd get everything out on a paper, by the end of it, you can look at the entry. It's like indiscriminate scribbling, like you can't hardly read my writing. But towards the end, it's this really flowery, pretty cursive because I've come to a solution. It's kind of like through the process of my pen and journaling, I'm able to get out and process my feelings. And then something happens where the emotion starts to move out of me and I'm able to get insights and get some solutions to come to me. So that's happened for me. I have also done the manifesting thing where I have written down, I have manifested husbands. I've only been married twice. Okay. So, um, yeah. So, but I've manifested boyfriends and husbands. I've manifested jobs. Um, and the cool thing about it is that I mean, to me, it's like I write it down in specifics and that kind of thing. But it's not just I'm going to write it and then I'm going to put it away and do nothing about it. That's the thing I think that people get wrong about manifestation is that it's not sitting on your meditation cushion and just chanting and saying, I want this. The universe is not a giant vending machine. It is,
Awesome
right?
if
I
it
mean,
was.
there's some, I mean, there are some people who get miraculous results, but it's because number one, they are dedicated,
Mm.
absolutely disciplined about their journaling practice and they're being specific about what it is they want. They also have unbelievable faith that it will happen. They let go of the timeline. Okay, that's a one key piece. It's on divine timing, not your timing, often. Okay, sometimes it happens faster, sometimes it happens a little more, a little later, but if you can let go of the timing and let go of the how, right? Like you can
Yes.
be specific, but getting specific to, like, for example, I'm sure that there's people out there that have manifested lottery winnings. But Dr. Wayne Dyer talks about this. He said, if you get to the root of it, that what you're asking for is not necessarily more money. You're asking for financial stability. You're asking for financial security.
Hmm.
So can you write from that place and be open to all the different ways that prosperity shows up? Because it may not just be cash. It may be divine ideas in terms of a new business that you want to start, or it may be some advice that you give to someone, or someone else offers you a different job than you thought and you would have never considered it before, or it may have been that somebody gives you something of value, so it's not cash in hand. So I mean it's starting to broaden your perspective again
Hmm.
about what it is that you're manifesting, and then having unshakable faith that it will show up, and letting go of how it will look, how it will show up. And then the last part of it is you doing your part. If you're wanting to manifest more money, let's say, because that's usually what everybody wants to manifest more money, it's like, well, what are you willing to do? What divine inspired ideas do you have? I have a side hustle. I don't even like to call it a side hustle. I have a side, what do I want to call it? We're going to figure out a different term for this. A side quest. It's my
Quest.
side
I love
quest.
that.
I need a sword and a shield now. I have a fabulous side quest that I'm very passionate about. And I don't mind that it's a side quest right now. I don't need it to be my full-time job. There are aspects of my full-time job that I love, but I have a side quest, and that's something that brings me in a little bit more money. And I don't worry about whether I'm bringing in a ton more money because of the fact that it is a side quest, and B, because I love serving people in this capacity.
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, there's so many nuances, so many nuances. I mean, it's when The Secret came out,
Oh yeah.
um, a lot of people really got it. It was very fabulous, but there were some criticisms of that movie because they made it sound like, oh, you just get really clear about what you want and you believe it and it's going to come to you. And there's a lot, it's a lot more process oriented than
Right. This
that.
isn't a genie in a lamp situation where you
No,
just
no,
go, I'd like a bowl of popcorn and have a bowl of popcorn
right?
suddenly appear in front of you.
Shazam. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
I
Funny
ate
you
it.
did that because I had popcorn just before this. So it did
Myself.
manifest. Yes. And it's also, we forget that there's this process of universal flow, right? If you're asking for something to come to you, another question to ask is, what are you willing to give?
Yes.
Right? Because
Mhm.
those that are the most successful at manifesting amazing results give.
Yeah.
Like there's this concept of tithing in the church, right?
Mhm.
Give 10% of what you earn back to the church or what feeds you spiritually. And for the longest time, when I grew up in the Catholic faith, I did not get it and I did not do it because I just thought, what? What? No, I'm
Giving you
not.
my
I'm
money.
not. I'm not. No, I'm not going to give you a, what is this? But when you do more study, the act of tithing is this, and it doesn't have to be money. It can be your time, it could be other things, right?
Right.
It is if you tithe or give 10%, I don't know, 10% of your time, 10% of your belongings, 10% of your money, whatever. It's not just giving it to charities or churches or spiritual centers that feed you to say thank you. The core of it is you are giving a statement to the universe that you trust so deeply that whatever you give is going to return back to you because
Yeah.
that is the law of universal flow,
Mhm.
that it your giving is a statement of faith.
Right.
That's the reason to do it is I know. I mean, I don't tithe because I don't really, I mean, I have kind of a home church, but I don't. I'd rather give my funds, my time, my food, whatever, to others in different ways. So
Yeah.
I'm much more about, I mean, that's just sort of natural for me is giving in that way. And I forget that I do it. And then it's like when I get something, somebody gives me an extra ticket to this concert or whatever, that's not just people being nice to you. Think about broaden your view. It's like when things like that come to you, oh my gosh, that person let me cut in line at the grocery store. That person bought XYZ for me. That person gave me a gift. That person let me borrow their lawnmower or whatever. All of those things are the universe coming back to you saying, see, we will fulfill your needs. We will meet your needs so long as you contribute to the flow
Right.
that can flow. We're flowing and giving to others. You can expect and have faith in the fact that you will be given to you and all your needs are met. So that's we kind of got off on a tangent, but that's but I love that topic. And
Mhm.
so with regards to journaling, yes, you can use journaling for that. Now my journaling has shifted a little bit. There's still a little bit of that, but I'm using Colette Baron Reid's process, which is about it's sort of like light shadow work or sort of even like a little bit of self-therapy is getting to know yourself really well, and so I use oracle cards. I pick a card. I ask beforehand, what does my highest self want me to write about today for my highest good? I may pull a card and go, this doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what this is saying, but I'm going to read the description of the card and then I'm going to write about it. So it's almost like just journal prompts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Journal prompts are a way for you to get the pen flowing so that you can start getting to know who you are. What do you feel? What's
Right.
important to you? What do you value? How did you process that? What do you think about manifesting? What do you think about community? And do you have enough of that in your life? Oh, maybe it'll prompt you to do something different. It is it's just a beautiful self-reflection
Mm-hmm.
tool,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be used in wider uh, ways of, the manifesting a life that you really are excited about. But it's not, if you're using it for that specific reason without anything else on your part, I think you might be disappointed.
Right. Yes.
Because you have to look at, I mean, going back to the manifesting part, I know we're a little bit over. It's fine, people.
No, no,
This
no.
is an interesting conversation. If you are writing down things that you want to manifest or create in your life, but you're not doing the inner work to look at all of the ways that you self-sabotage,
Right.
you're going to be disappointed,
Yeah. Yes.
right? Like what, I'm afraid of being an entrepreneur. I'll just say that right out there. There's aspects of it that seem hard to me and overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for a fact that's my stuff. And that is what is holding me back from real success with that. I'm not even sure that that's really what I want to do, but I'm curious by it and I'm still doing some of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
so, but I have to look at those beliefs, and that's part of where journaling can come in, is go, oh,
Right.
this is what I really want to manifest, but what are some of my beliefs about this that are lurking? They're like tabs that you have open in the background that are stealing your
Like
CPU to
saying, mm-hmm.
speed. Yeah, it's going to jam your computer every time.
Yep.
So journaling can be a great place to uncover that and work with those. So that journaling is fabulous. And so we'll talk a little bit more in detail next time about journaling processes and
Love it.
some great resources and such. So
Love it.
I want to kind of make sure that I'm respectful of your time and everybody else's time.
Of course.
So yeah, we'll wrap up. And by next time, hopefully you will have finished the
Oh, I
book.
will be.
And I can't wait to hear what you think about that very last page. I'm telling you, the very last page, Laura
Can't
Shaw.
wait. I should be done in the next couple of days.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's
You'll get
fabulous.
a random text from me that says
I
crazy.
love it. Yes, I hope so. I'm expecting it. I'm
Yeah,
expecting
yeah.
it.
So the
So
measure, everyone, Nikki Ehrlich. It literally will. It is food
it's a
for thought and fodder and discussion, and it's so amazing. If you need a copy, let me know. I'll loan it out to friends.
I've got an extra copy. I'm happy to loan it to somebody. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, circulate it for good. I don't need to keep it.
Yeah.
You guys want it? Let
Mm-hmm.
me know.
Yeah.
Thank you for this wonderful conversation. I'm excited about where our conversation is headed next.
Yes.
We're going to be talking more about soulful living.
Yes.
So join us in a couple of weeks as we talk about journaling. And until then, everybody, my friends, have a wonderful, sacred week. And we'll talk
Yes.
soon.
Bye, friends.
Bye, everybody.